Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Adam the Fanatic, and today we're going to be taking a look at Warriors of Krynn, a cooperative adventure set in the Dragonlance continuity by Wizards of the Coast. No prior knowledge of Dragonlance is required to enjoy this game, which is a good thing because I'm not really that familiar with it myself. Without any further ado, let's dive in. In Warriors of Krynn, 3 to 5 heroes will be attempting to defend the city of Kalaman from the Dragon Queen Takhisis and her armies. Over the course of the campaign, you'll take part in 12 battles, with heroes and villains alike growing more powerful over the course of the campaign, and a light story connecting the scenarios as a single coherent adventure. On that note, I should mention that this game is compatible with the Dragonlance RPG module, Shadow of the Dragon Queen. I will not be looking at the RPG module and wouldn't be familiar enough with 5th edition to judge it anyways. Although Warriors of Krynn is designed for 3 to 5 players, you can play with fewer players if you're willing to play multiple heroes, or even try it with 6 as all the necessary components are included for such, though the designer has warned it has not been playtested at 6. To set up, begin by choosing a scenario. If this is your first time playing, you'll either want to start with a tutorial scenario or Scenario 1, Battle of Vogler. For this example, we'll be showing off Scenario 2, Marshal's Gambit. You'll set up the board according to the diagram in the scenario book, which is also aided by the sidebar, which lists the various components you'll need. In this case, we need 3 battle tiles, 2, 7, and 8, and 8 adventure tiles, 13, 14, 17, 20, 21, 26, 28, and 31. All map tiles are double-sided with A on one side and B on another. After you've set up the map, look at the battle tiles and place army tokens respectively. Most of them will start face up like this, but you'll also see a few like this that has that troop start face down, representing that the unit is shaken. Next, each battle tile will generally have 2 commanders, one for each side. In this case, the farmstead will have Raven Uth Vogler and Keza Daywatcher. The abandoned fields will have Cudgel Ironsmile and Lozette of the Black Robes, and the Broken Lands will have Marshal Vendry battling against Viewmaster Roke. Note that Ironsmile and Roke are displayed differently in the diagram. This means they'll both start face down, representing that they're shaken. More on that later. For this scenario, we also have a single war engine, the War Drums, so we'll need that card as well. We'll also need a number of tokens for each scenario. In this case, we need a single objective token. The purpose of these tokens vary from scenario to scenario, but in this case, it represents a spy that we need to extract. You'll also take a single war engine token, which represents the aforementioned war drums on the battlefield. Next, you'll also take a number of Vile Champion tokens at random and place them on the spots indicated on the map. Once you reach Veteran and Legendary level scenarios, you'll also encounter some especially powerful champions unique to their scenarios, but Recruit level champions will always be chosen at random. Next, take the indicated flank tokens. The battle can have up to 5 flanks, but in this case we'll be using 3, setting them up as the left, center, and right flanks, with the center flank face up and the other 2 face down. Next, you'll build the event deck, taking the indicated cards and shuffling them together. In this case, there's a total of 10 cards. The instructions specify that you are allowed to look through these before the scenario begins, so it might be wise to read them before shuffling to see what you're up against. That covers scenario-specific setup, but there's also a number of things you'll do before every scenario unless specified otherwise. Take the 6 unit decks and shuffle each individually. This means you'll have a footman, an archer, and a mounted deck each for both the Dragon Army and the Alliance. Also, shuffle the equipment deck. Set up the key event track, placing the marker on the 0 space. Also be sure to keep Tactics, Fire, Barricade, and the remaining Vile Champion tokens and dice nearby. Some scenarios may also have you using some of these at the onset of a map. Once the map is set up, each player should choose a character and take its matching mini. The actual character doesn't matter beyond aesthetics, but the class you choose for them certainly will. There are 12 different classes to choose from, all of which should be familiar to Dungeons & Dragons fans. Once you've chosen a class, look at the back of the card and take the 4 indicated ability cards into your hand. These can be used in a variety of ways, which will be explained in a little bit. Next, take a stress marker and place it on the 0 space on your character track. Finally, since this is the second scenario, there will be additional cards that the players get at the start of the game. Since I won the first scenario, I have the Saviors of Vogler reputation card, and I chose a Wisdom Medal, which can both be used once per scenario by any hero. With that, read the opening text for the scenario. Most scenarios will let you choose one of 2 options to get started. In this case, the players can choose to take the Bag of Iron Coins equipment card or to shake 2 Dragon Army units on the right flank. In this case, there aren't that many charisma encounters visible on the board, so we'll go with the latter, flipping 2 Dragon Army tokens face down to show that they've been shaken. Turn structure in Warriors of Krynn consists of 4 phases, the first of which is to draw an event card. Most event cards will have a Right Now section, which will resolve immediately. Majority of these effects are detrimental to players, but there certainly are some exceptions. Additionally, some change the active flank on the battlefield, and most scenarios have one representing each flank. In this case, we drew the left flank card, which tells us that that has become the active flank. So we'll flip the center flank token face down, and the left flank flips face up. It also tells us that during the battle phase, there will be an all-out battle, so we should do our best to prepare for that. The second phase is the action phase, where the current player gets to use their character to influence the battlefield in various ways, which are listed on your character card for quick reference. You'll generally have 4 actions in a turn, and you can spend these however you see fit, even using the same action multiple times. Firstly, you can activate class powers. This requires you to spend an ability card of the matching stat. So for example, if the fighter is on a tile with a Vile champion, she can spend a strength card and an action to defeat them without initiating a conflict, which might be a good idea since the Hill Giant would otherwise be especially nasty to deal with. The other 2 abilities are responses which do not take actions to activate and can even be activated outside of that player's turn, but only under special circumstances, and they still must discard a matching attribute card. The second option during your action phase is to initiate conflict with a Vile champion in your tile. When you do this, you'll roll dice in an attempt to defeat them. You get 1 die regardless of any other circumstances. If your character's mastered attributes match the champion, you'll also gain another die. Additionally, you may spend extra actions or attribute cards that match the Vile champion to gain 1 die each, up to a maximum of 6 dice. After that, you'll roll the dice. In this case, we have 3 sword icons and a dragon. The swords are hits. Since the assassin has a challenge rating of 2, we only need 2 hits to win and we'll remove the assassin. Getting excess hits means we also find useful spoils in the battle and draw an equipment card. Regardless of how much you exceed the requirement by, you'll only draw 1 card. However, it's not all good news. The dragon symbol is a woe result, which means that the hero will also take 1 stress. In this case, it's not a big deal, but if they're already at the maximum stress, which is 4 since this is a recruit level scenario, then you'll also have to discard an ability card. If a hero ever needs to take stress beyond their maximum and you have no cards to discard, that character is killed and the scenario immediately ends in a loss. If you fail to defeat a Vile champion, you'll still take woe damage if applicable, but you can attack them again if you have any actions remaining. The next option is to activate an encounter. This can be used in 3 different ways. Firstly, if you're on a tile with a special effect, you can activate it. This requires a minimum of 1 action. In this case, we're on the command tent, which we can see says Wisdom 3. Any character can activate this effect by spending 3 actions. However, Wisdom Mastery or ability cards can reduce this. In this case, the cleric has mastered Wisdom, so he reduces the number of actions required by 1. He also discards a Wisdom card to further reduce it. Although you can theoretically do this multiple times, since it's already down to a single action, there would be no benefit in discarding multiple cards. This allows us to activate the tile, which in this case allows us to take event card 11, Reinforcements, and place it on the bottom of the event deck. Then we flip the command tent tile, since this ability can only be activated once per map. Similarly, if you're on a battle tile which has a shaken allied commander, you can refresh them in the same manner. In this scenario, Iron Smile begins shaken, but can likewise be refreshed by spending 2 actions. And once again, this can be reduced by mastery or discarding cards in the same way. The third way you can initiate an encounter is by interacting with an objective token. The exact effects of this vary from scenario to scenario, and some scenarios don't have this option at all. In this case, you can use an action to extract the spy. That's easier said than done, as it requires a dexterity roll equal to the number of dragon army units on that tile. Another action you can take is to move your hero. Moving from one tile to another is a single action. However, if you move onto a tile with a road, you can continue moving along that road without spending additional actions. You can move through tiles with enemies, but whenever you leave a tile with Vile champions, you'll take 1 stress for each recruit and 2 for each veteran or legendary champion on that space. You may also see this stop symbol on some spaces, or place it there via effects. If a space has this, then after moving onto that tile, you cannot leave for the rest of your turn. The next action you can take is to put out a fire. If you're on a battle tile with 1 or more fire tokens on the Alliance side, you may spend any number of actions to put out the same number of fires. Next, you may spend an action to give or take a single piece of equipment to or from another hero in the same space as you. Normally, you may only do this with equipment cards, but the rules for this scenario specify that you may also transfer the spy in the same way since they are being escorted. Finally, you may also use free actions during this time. Free actions may still only be activated during your action phase, but do not count against your limit of 4 actions. Equipment cards are generally free actions, and a handful of ability cards are as well. After your action phase is done, if you end your turn on a space without enemies, meaning no Dragon Army units or Vile Champions, then you'll enter the Respite Phase. During the Respite Phase, you may reduce your stress or reclaim your discarded ability cards. You may do this twice by default, plus 1 extra time for each action you had left over at the end of your action phase, if any. Finally, once you enter the battle phase, combat breaks out on the active flank. If it's a skirmish, you'll roll a skirmish die to determine which line fights and whether or not commanders will activate their abilities. However, this time we have an all-out battle, which means that we won't need the die because all battle lines will activate. The fighter moved into this flank at the end of her turn, so she can spend a strength card to activate the surprise attack skill, shaking 2 Dragon Army footman units. This will be important in a moment. After that, since it's an all-out battle, commanders will activate their powers if they're ready, starting with the Dragon Army. In this case, they'll reinforce their range line with another unit, and then the Alliance Commander allows you to add 2 Shaken units to any one battle line. Unless specified otherwise, any units that enter the battlefield will be ready, but Shaken units are better than nothing. In this case, the players decide to reinforce the range lines since they're already winning the other 2 battle lines at the moment. Then, you'll draw a card for each of the 3 battle lines, starting with the Footman. In the Footman line, both sides have 5 units. Normally, the Dragon Army would win ties. However, because of the fighter's surprise attack, the 2 footmen she shook don't count for this battle, so the Alliance has the advantage. You'll draw a battle card for them. In this case, we drew Local Militia, so we'll roll 3 dice since the commander is currently ready. In this case, we choose which units take the hits. If a ready unit is hit, it flips to the shaken side. If a shaken unit is hit, it's removed from the battlefield. In this case, we'll deal the damage to the Shaken Footman to maintain our advantage on this battle line for future combats. Since there's a woe result, we also take 1 damage to our own battle line as well. After that, the Dragon Army has a clear advantage on the ranged line, so we'll draw a card from their deck this time, revealing Goblin Fire Arrows. This one doesn't use any dice, but simply applies 3 hits to the allied mounted line. We want to maintain an advantage there, so we'll have each unit take 1 of those hits, flipping them all to their shaken side, but keeping them on the battlefield. However, we're also forced to flip Boggler to her shaken side. After that, we move on to the mounted line, where the Alliance once again has the advantage, so we draw Light Horse Archers, which gives us 2 options. Wanting to start whittling down the foe's archers, the players decide to go the riskier path with the second option, rolling 3 dice. 2 woe results means that we'd have to take 2 hits on the attacking line if nothing has changed, so we'll use the Wisdom Medal to reroll up to 2 dice. 2 hits isn't great, but it's certainly a lot better than taking 2 ourselves. With that, the turn is over and passes to the next player, beginning with the event phase once again. However, there are some other important things to note. Firstly, every scenario makes use of the key event card. This marks the passage of time on the battlefield and will have various things happen unique to that scenario, telling you to turn to a specific entry in the back of the manual. Each time this happens, you'll advance the key event track by 1 space. At the end of the turn, you'll reshuffle the event discard, including the key event card, and place it on the bottom of the event deck. Another thing to keep in mind are tactics tokens. When these are placed on the battlefield, the next time that line fights, they'll be treated as having 1 additional unit. This can go beyond the physical maximum of 6 that can be on a single battle tile. You'll also have barricade tokens which effectively add 1 HP to the unit. If the barricade is hit, it'll be destroyed, but the unit being protected by it will be unaffected. The other major thing to keep in mind is that when all units of one side are either shaken or eliminated, the opposing side takes control of that battle tile. When this happens, you'll remove all units of the opposing side and the shaken units of the victorious side. You'll then take the flank token and place it on a neighboring adjacent battle tile, along with 1 unit of each type if possible. Furthermore, if the Dragon Army takes control of a tile, it will typically have to read a passage pertaining to the scenario, which will generally add insult to injury, along with extra injury at that. If at any point all the battle tiles have been claimed, the scenario ends immediately, regardless of any special rules. Which brings us to ending a scenario. Most scenarios have special conditions that end the game, though there are 3 instances that will end any scenario. If the final key event activates, the scenario will end after that turn. If a hero dies, then the scenario is instantly lost. And if all battle tiles are controlled, then the side with control of more battle tiles wins, with a tie resulting in a whole result. All scenarios will have 1 of 3 results for the heroes. Decisive victory results in a win, which gives them a reputation card specific to the scenario, plus allows them to take 1 medal of their choice. If they partially succeeded, then they have managed to hold and will still gain the reputation reward. However, if you fail in your mission, then the scenario ends in a loss. You won't gain any permanent bonuses, but in the next scenario, you'll gain 2 equipment cards and be able to place 2 tactics tokens at the onset. As the campaign goes on, you'll eventually reach veteran and legendary difficulties. When you reach the 5th scenario, you'll open the veteran cards pack and open the legendary packs before playing the 9th scenario. These will include new commanders and combat cards for both sides. You'll also face more fearsome vile champions. Veteran champions cause 2 damage when you leave a space containing them, and legendary champions additionally turn their space into a stop tile. But to combat these fiercer challenges, your heroes will upgrade as well. You'll increase your max stress by 1 each time, and also gain an additional class card for each class, giving you 2 additional ability cards at the start of each adventure, 2 more masteries, and 2 new skills. However, you can't rest on your laurels. Starting at the 5th scenario and onwards, if you manage to acquire enough victories, the Dragon Queen's army will take special interest in defeating the heroes, giving your foes a boon at the start of each battle. If you're doing especially well, you'll even have to add the especially nasty "Your Reputation Precedes You" card to the event deck. Eventually, after 12 games, the campaign will come to a close, with resolution determined by how many total reward cards you claimed and a final passage to close out the adventure. Component-wise, the game is mixed. The cards are of decent quality and have a smooth finish. You have both standard and mini-size cards for different purposes. Tokens are a bit on the thin side, as are the character boards and map tiles. The character minis feel fairly rubbery and have a wash applied to make them pop a bit more, and they are well detailed. The army unit pieces are simple plastic, and the game includes quite a few of them. It should be noted that I used panel liners to make the dragon army pieces pop a bit more. They come as just a plain orange color. But since the different unit types are different shapes, it's really not necessary to take such a measure, though I do like the results. Dice are unique to the game, with 6 battle dice plus the skirmish die. They're engraved in addition to the symbols being painted white and of standard size. The artwork for the game is fairly hit and miss. The commanders and map tiles all look good. The maps look especially impressive once they're assembled together, but the heroes have this stylized art which is just not to my taste at all. On a more positive note, the rule and scenario books have threaded binding as opposed to merely using staples. Finally, the game does include an insert which works pretty well and even includes dividers for all the cards. All in all, Warriors of Krynn is a pretty unique game. Despite clearly having Pandemic in its heritage, it's a pretty unique implementation of such an action system. While it is far from a traditional war game, it does a great job of making it feel like a large-scale battle. The heroes certainly can't do everything on their own, but they can influence the outcome of the battle. The fact that each scenario can be won by either routing the enemy or pursuing unique objectives gives you different options in how you approach the game. Though naturally, you'll usually have one option that's a bit more viable than the other. The classes do a pretty good job of differentiating the characters, even if the actual characters themselves are all mechanically identical. On the downside, the rules can be a little unclear at times, and it feels like there should have been an errata to clean things up a bit. The game isn't as difficult to learn as it might seem, but it is quite table hungry, especially in the later scenarios where you're using more and more map tiles. The scenarios do feel quite different from one another, with unique rules for each keeping things fresh and varied. I've played the tutorial plus the first 6 scenarios thus far, which is half of the campaign. While I have won the majority of them thus far, it did a great job of making my situation feel precarious, even when I did eventually eke out a win. I don't normally talk price on my channel, because what's $50 today could easily be $20 or $100 a year from now. However, I do think this one warrants an exception. It originally released at $80 USD. At that price, I would have been absolutely furious at the component quality. However, I managed to find it at Ollie's for only $10, and at that price, it is an amazing deal. Regardless, I very much enjoyed what I've played so far and am looking forward to the other half of the campaign, especially eventually unlocking those legendary cards. In conclusion, I find Warriors of Krynn to be worth a respectable 8.2 out of 10. If you're interested in purchasing Warriors of Krynn, my first suggestion, as always, is to check with your friendly local game store to see if they have it in stock. If you can't find it, or simply wish to learn more, links are included in the description. But what about you? What do you think of Warriors of Krynn? What games based off of RPG settings do you enjoy? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. If you really enjoy my work, please consider funding my channel on Patreon. Until next time, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.